planning has evolved as a vocation as well as a tool for growth.
Urban planning, I think it helps in guiding future development.
Technology need to serve the environment, the city at the end.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you all to this session on innovations in urban planning. I would also like to initiate the panel discussion with a brief introduction of our esteemed panelists who have gathered here today to share their views and learnings on the subject. I would like to welcome them one by one. I have Dr. Rumi Aijaz, Senior Fellow of the Observer Research Foundation. Rumi is working as a senior fellow at the ORF in New Delhi, where he is responsible for the conduct of the Urban Policy Research Program. The program is now in its 15th year, and during this time, he has established research collaborations, conducted studies on urbanization-related topics, smart cities, etc. Next, we have Shruti Pandey, who is the founder of Strawcture. She has completed her master's degree in construction management from New York University and is a BTech in civil engineering from India. She's the founder of Strawcture Eco, which is India's first carbon negative building materials startup. She's also a TEDx speaker, Forbes 30 under 30 honoree, and is a United Nations Social Impact Challenge awardee. So welcome, Vineeta. Shriti. Second, we have Saadi, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Tondo Smart. Guy leverages his unique combination of business acumen and technical experience to lead the Tondo team to create an innovative, world-class leader in smart city solutions and smart lighting. So he brings with him about 20 years of experience in solution and leadership of communication networks. So he's an IoT turnkey solution specialist, and by which he's able to leverage the distinct advantages which it brings to the industry and the solutioning. Next, we have Vinita Hariharan, who is the Chief of the Externally Aided Missions in the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. She's a qualified engineer with a master's in urban planning from School of Planning and Architecture, and is also a master's in public administration from the National University of Singapore. So she is a voracious public speaker and a thought leader in diverse issues of public policy affecting the nation building. She is also helpful in designing several national policies and has led the implementation of certain flagship programs of the Government of India. And she's also the founder of Sankasa Foundation, which is focusing up on micro-level community issues in Kerala through a series of networking dialogues. So as you could see from the introductions here, we have a very diverse panel where we've attempted to invite people with diverse backgrounds so that they can share their professional acumen and their nuggets of knowledge with you. So we have representation from academics, training, specialized avenues of sustainability, design consulting, and public policies as sectors which are finding a voice on this platform. So keeping this introduction in view, I would just like to make a little bit of a contextualization on the topic that we have in hand, and after which we will take up the discussion with the individual panelists. So as we are all aware, traditionally, urban planning has been a kind of a forward thinking process whereby your towns, cities, and urban areas are laid out basis a set objectives which are defined by the centers, states, or the urban local bodies at the local level. So by which you have an overall guidance, vision for planning globally, centrally, as well as locally, which are being usually dictated by master plans. So urban planning is supposed to affect the quality of our livable spaces, the common spaces, thereby providing solutions for transportation, infrastructure, area layouts, while meeting the prescribed norms and densities which the governments and the systems are laying out. So without such a vision with urban planning, our cities are, may become inefficient or uninviting for its residents. But over the time also, we have seen urban planning has evolved as a vocation as well as a tool for growth. So new design ideas, inputs from technology, mapping techniques, automation of design development, softwares are some of the ideas which have propelled the stream. And with the last 2 years development of the COVID-19 pandemic has raised the issues of weaving in sustainability and quality of lives in our living spaces. So while we can look at global examples, whether it is Copenhagen, which is talking about a first carbon neutral city, or Amsterdam talking about promoting electric vehicles, Stockholm talking about elimination of fossil fuels, these are all innovative ideas and interventions which are going to ameliorate the quality of life. So with this in mind, I would like to call upon our panelists to first speak about their ideas on using sustainable materials. So I'd like to start with Shriti, and I would like to pose this question to you, that while you are working in the field of innovation in construction practices, how widespread is this, in terms of market adoption, its penetration? Please share your views with us.
Sure, definitely. So the way we see the current industry in India, that when we are talking about sustainable buildings, it has to address both embodied and operational carbon footprint. And we usually address the operational carbon footprint most by clean energy initiatives. But soon, by the end of 2030, 90% of the building's footprint will be embodied, which is the choice of the materials that we work with. Could be the exterior or the interior materials. And that's where we, as one company in India, feel that if you use more sustainable materials that are made out of local and upcycled resources, which essentially are considered waste. And at our organization, we believe waste is only a waste if you waste it. So if you can upcycle waste, could be construction, could be agricultural waste, could be unwanted discarded plastic or other municipal waste, into sustainable building materials that can really address the performance of the buildings. You will address the energy footprint as well, because the heat load goes down when you're using sustainable materials, because they're always, if without any exception, more permeable, more energy efficient. And in total, you are then building a long lasting building that's healthier and durable. And we have seen widespread adoption in India in last 3 years, being in this space both by commercial, government and residential builders, as well as architects who want to use sustainable materials. The only thing I feel is that we need to measure it more tangibly. At least for India, we are still comparatively at a nascent stage versus Europe. But if we can further measure it more tangibly and show the result to a builder, I don't think there are very few builders and architects out there who don't see the merit at this point of time, at the current period, of not using a sustainable or more less carbon intensive product that's there.
Thank you, Shriti. I'd like to bring in Dr. Rumi here because he's also working from a larger perspective of policy making. So, Dr. Saab, we'd like to hear your views on the role and change in urban planning with reference to development of smart and sustainable cities.
Thank you, Nitika. Thanks. Although Nitika has already explained what urban planning is, and we all like to describe what it is, because it's a very powerful idea and concept. Unfortunately, its full potential is still not being utilized insofar as Indian towns and cities are concerned. And also outside the Indian borders, there can be inequalities in towns and cities which are quite prominent. So I would also like to give my idea of what I think about urban planning. I think it helps in guiding future development in an orderly manner, in a disciplined manner. That's what it's intended to do. And this work is done by preparing and implementing a plan. We just heard about the master plan for Delhi. And in this, the plan preparation exercise ensures that there is optimal utilization of available land and also proper location of facilities and services. That is to say, this is the area designated for residential purposes, for commercial, for institutional, for industrial and recreational purposes. This is where the infrastructure and networks are going to be, infrastructure networks are going to be laid down in the city. And this is a statutory document. It has a legal basis, and therefore everyone has to abide by what is provided in the plan. And the overall effort in this exercise is to create a city that is people friendly, it's environment friendly, it is livable, it's inclusive, it's sustainable and resilient. But we all know from our experience and of our visiting to different urban centers in India that not all cities are equipped with such a statutory instrument. That is to say, a city plan. And even if there is a plan, in many cases, that plan is not being implemented properly. And this leads to or a number of problems. Problems such as irrational conversion of land use, which in turn leads to haphazard growth of built structures. We see this in peri-urban areas and census towns. And also there is emergence of informal areas, what we know as slums and unauthorized colonies. And overall, there is an inferior quality of life that prevails in places where plans are not followed. And you will be surprised to know that there are still many statutory towns in the country that are evolving or developing without a proper plan. So this is the introduction to urban planning.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Saab. I'll follow this up with further questions after I've taken everybody on the call. So I'd like to bring in Mr. Saadi, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Tondo Smart. So Tondo is a smart city solution and a smart lighting provider, which is a very niche intervention within the urban space. So I would like to ask you, Mr. Saadi, how do you think big data technologies can help us achieve sustainable urban development?
Thanks. So first of all, I would like to thank for the great honor of being part of this honorable place. I would like first to speak about the Indian and Israeli relationship. Israel and India are celebrating 30 years of diplomatic relationship, and I think what is combined between those two countries, first that innovation, and I think one of the two most innovative countries around the world, and this unique combination between the companies can cooperate and succeed more and more. Regarding the question of big data, I think that first, big data is a big word that it's not always understandable what we can do with big data, and the importance of planning how we want to put the data and what we want to collect in the next future, it's something that is very open question, and we need to answer it not only today, also in the years to come. So what is important when we are planning and putting big data technologies in each one that can help and make successful in all around the world, because technology at the end needs to serve the environment, the people. We are not just making technology for the technology. And I know a lot of companies that making technology for technology. Technology need to serve the environment, the city at the end. And we can give a lot of example of how big data, for example, can help the environment and the citizens. And I will give several examples from our world, okay? We are dealing with smart lighting, and smart lighting at the base are saving energy. And saving energy is something that is very essential for all the public area and answering one of the most challenging things that the city will need to answer in the near future. But the big data that is behind it, that is coming with all the collecting of the data from the smart lighting, but not only this, the combination without the other big data technology can serve and protect the environment much more. And I will give another example. We have an Israeli road tender that having operational of the road from north to the south with more than 120,000 devices connected for the street light. And the combination of the big data, not only from the street light, also from the next step that they are going to do on top of a platform that my company is bringing for traffic monitoring, environmental sensors, all this combination of big data can serve much more when they are combined together. For example, I will give an example that they are doing with their things. If, for example, the traffic monitoring identify that there is not any movement in the road, yes, then it can decrease the amount of light and save more energy and also protect all the ecosystem of the animals, for example, that is something of the sustainable of the society. Another example, for example, the combination of traffic monitoring but also environmental sensors can identify if there is in a specific area a lot of traffic that cause environmental problem. For example, in the specific road, there is a lot of truck that is going, and according to the environmental sensors, there is a huge pollution over there. Then the operational road can take the places of the trucks for different places that will decrease the pollution. So big data will be something that will be very important in making the sustainable of the environment, but it's okay that sometimes we don't know to define today because the solution must live for us for a lot of years. And it's okay that the solution will be enough flexible in order to understand in the future what the big data can influence and have big effort of the environment and sustainable.
Thank you, Mr. Saadi. So while we've talked about the traditional role of urban planning, niche construction practices, smart solutioning, I would like to bring in another dimension, which is the human and the management aspect. And for this, I would like to bring in Ms. Vinita Hariharan, who is the Chief of Externally Aided Missions in the Ministry of Micro, Small and Medium Enterprises. So Vineeta, you work closely with ministries and the central government. So please share your views on the key management strategies that can be adopted by city leadership to make our urban areas smart, equitable, and also more humane.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here on this, my core subject of urban planning. So, beginning with urban planning as a discipline itself, if I may just begin with that, since we share the same, we are alumni of the same School of Planning and Architecture. So, when I began in '97, urban planning was ahead of its times in India, and it still seems to be ahead of its times. So, we still haven't caught up with this concept of what is urban planning in India and what is its utility in the and how we actually can roll out the urban planning systems, like Dr. Rumi just mentioned about how enforcement is the key to all of urban planning, urban planning designs and the discipline itself. So while we don't have a lack of master plans and scientifically designed master plans, which are spatial plans, which are mostly stuck in the shelves of the town and country planning organization departments even now, so there was this move to unshackle it with the smart city mission that was rolled out by this present government. But I think that was a radical shift from traditional planning to a very reactive kind of planning with the smart city mission. While smart city is also good because it caters to the immediate, it troubleshoots on various aspects of the city planning elements. But there needs to be a balance between the two, I think, the traditional forms of urban planning, the master planning, and also the kind of very efficient, management practices that come with the smart city mission. And so when you speak of the humane and the management aspects of it, I think we go back to this old, thing of, well, I started off in 20 years back, we still had a problem of lack of professionals and in the municipalities and in the towns and in the local bodies. So we still, I think, suffer from that quite a bit in terms of actually capacitating our urban local bodies, because none of the urban planners who graduate from schools want to really go and serve in local bodies. So I think that's a big gap that we need to address in terms of human resource management in urban planning. And while we compare the urban and the rural dimension, so if you see the definition of an urban, what is an urban area as per the census of India, it's just that 75% of the male working population should be non-agricultural. So it's male working population. So that itself needs to be, redefined. We need to start with redefinition of what is an urban area. So there's a very thin line dividing an urban and a rural area. So like most of our towns, around 8,000 and odd towns we have, are actually, many of them, almost 60% of them are actually urban in character but rural, administratively still rural, called census towns. So because local bodies prefer to be rural because they get a lot of grants and from the subsidies from the government of India. So still the rural aspects of the rural areas are given more thrust by the government of India, I think. So I think so that's another area. While we start with the definition, redefining what an urban area is, and move more towards territorial development, I think, not really have the silos between an urban and a rural area, because that kind of border is kind of thinning down in India. So we look at more of territorial development and also look at local economic development. I think we need to move towards the concept of a local economic development in this whole urban planning ethos of our country.
Yeah, true. And that is what will bring up the development from ground up.
Absolutely.
And make the necessary change in the urban landscape of the country. Keeping that thought through, I would like to go back to Dr. Rumi and ask him a question on what are the challenges which arise due to a lack of maybe a focus or a methodological approach towards city planning.
Thank you for your question. I have a couple of responses in this regard. The first point could be that there is a shortage of planners in the country. So often it is shared in discussion groups about an acute or immense shortage of planners in India. That's one of the major challenges in the country. There is so much of urban planning required. There are, if you talk about statutory towns, there are 4,000 plus statutory towns. But if you follow the census definition, there are over 7,000 or 8,000 urban areas in the country. But not getting into the definitional aspects, the point is that there is a tremendous need for more number of planners in the country. So that's challenge number one. The second point is about the urban planning education in the country. There are still, although in the recent past some effort has been made to increase the number of educational institutions offering courses in town planning and related disciplines, but we know that India is a big country. It has a huge urban population, at least in terms of absolute numbers, not in terms of proportions, but in absolute numbers. And therefore, more educational institutions offering courses in town planning, according to me, is the second most important challenge. The third point could be the eligibility criteria for people who are entering into this profession. It is a big issue still in India. Some steps have been taken in this regard, but the problem was that not enough qualified persons are entering into this discipline, which meant that an eligibility condition of being a town planner was not the only criteria. Some state governments are trying to amend the recruitment rules to ensure entry of qualified candidates in this profession. The fourth aspect could be, according to me, is the non-availability of GIS based master plans, urban plans. it is very important to know all the changes that are occurring eh, in our towns and cities on on a real time basis, I would say, on a real time basis. And technologies such as GIS, they relate data to a map, and then using which you are able to take some of the best decisions insofar as planning is concerned, planning for a city. And then there's another big challenge of the capacity of planners themselves. There are town planning departments in different states of India, but it has been a concern that their capacity to prepare a master plan which is smart, sustainable, resilient, ensuring all those parameters participatory, representative, inclusive, engaging, etc., etc. Some kind of orientation programs should be held for the planners who are working in different positions in the government. So that's another challenge. And the final challenge could be about the uh, lack of a multidisciplinary committee on matters related to making of urban policies, on capacity building, on planning and implementation. You know, planning, city planning, town planning is such a field that you have to have diverse knowledge. It is not possible for one person to acquire that knowledge, and therefore specialists having expertise in sociology, in geography, in architecture, in engineering, and economics, they all have to work together to make the best plan, which is people friendly and environment friendly. So according to me, these are the challenges that should be urgently addressed if the transformation that everybody is looking for is to be achieved.
Thank you, Dr. Rumi. And in this direction, we've also seen that Niti Aayog in the last 6 months, well, actually in September of last year, came out with a multidisciplinary report on capacity building for urban planning in the country, which is one of its first kind of initiatives undertaken at the central government level. I'd like to also bring in Shriti here. Shriti, while you're working in the innovations in construction practices, I would like you to share your views on how such innovation in materials will be adopted or assimilated by the government sector, which spearheads the major projects in urban planning and development vis-a-vis cost effectiveness and usability, sorry.
Definitely. So, in last 3 years, we have actually seen that, as you were mentioning, Niti Aayog and different bodies of the government has been extremely supportive to do a lot of mock-ups, to do a lot of demo structures with different technologies that are faster and sustainable in the country. So the government came up with this LGFS, which is Smart Cities Mission, where they tried to, in a very quick manner, explore a lot of faster technologies. And we were one of the entities which got an opportunity to build COVID hospitals, childcare centers, primary healthcare centers in the outskirts of the country, even as far as the northeast, to do construction and showcase to the government that these are viable technologies in the building sector, which takes time to innovate versus fintech and other industries that are there, and give government the confidence that they can faster adopt and replicate these. So we have done a lot of model structures with government at the local level, state level, as well as the center level. So I have seen tremendous support there from the government to faster use new technologies, considering, as my fellow speaker said, that is sustainable for the human as well as the environment, and has to be faster considering the pace at which the Indian construction and the entire pace at which urbanization is happening. So when it's faster and sustainable, government is looking to adopt new technologies.
Thank you, Shriti. Mr. Saadi, here I would like to seek your views on how can India or any other developing nation achieve energy efficiency in their urban spaces.
Yeah, so first of all, the energy resources is one of the biggest challenge of the new modern city because, and we're going to see it more and more as the urbanization is getting bigger, by the way, not only in India, all around the world. people are coming more to the inside the city, and the challenges are getting more and more. Energy efficiency is one of the most important things. I think there is a lot of things that separately can reduce the energy consumption. If you're going to take, for example, the replacement to LED, the replacement to LED is a revolution that is already happening all around the world that can reduce energy by 50%. But sometimes it's not enough because the challenges become more and more big. And if, for example, for my world, we are adding smart connectivity, we can reduce the energy consumption by an additional 30%. But again, as I am speaking, sometimes it's not enough. And the ability to have a system that is ecosystem, full ecosystem that is talking with each other can increase the reduction even more. The cities will be also occupied by making new resources of energy, but also need to have the ability to save. And if we're going to have solution that can be talking with each other with a lot of AI capabilities and smart capabilities. And again, I will give the example that I gave before of the traffic monitoring, for example, that if we identify a traffic of the cars, then we can have a multidisciplinary case studies and solution that will change the amount of the lights and turn it off, for example, if there is not any movement. Or for example, EV charging, okay? And I'm going to the question of why it's so important to plan from in advance things that will be in the future. Because when if cities will not plan in advance what will be the future and how we're going to save energy, even not now, in the near future, they will have they will suffer from how to implement it. And if I'm going to the example of EV charging, and that today more and more cities wants to have an EV charging on the poles that they are looking for, in my world, and that's what is closing the ecosystem. If the cities will not have a smart lighting, it will be very difficult, almost someone say impossible, to implement EV charging, because if you don't have control on the street light, you will not be able to have EV charging at the bottom. So everyone can save separately energy efficiency by the LED and the smart LED, but if we're going to have an ecosystem that is talking with each other, with brand platform, with multidisciplinary scenarios together, we can save much more energy together.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saadi. Vineeta, I'd also like to bring you here into the dialogue and take it a little bit further, because you also work with micro level community issues wherein you do a lot of policy engagement by which policy issues are sorted out and even moderated, generated, and created for local aspects. So I would like to ask you, how do you look at the social aspect, or what are the key issues that you would like to imbibe into the urban development?
Yeah, sure. Like I just mentioned in the previous conversation, that this while rural development has gone leaps ahead in terms of actually integrating the community into the planning aspects. So we see a lot of these Gram Panchayat development plans being prepared by the community, and there's a lot of grants going into actually capacitating the rural local bodies to prepare their own plans, the community's engagement, and engaging the communities in preparing the plans for their own local bodies at their own communities. So I think that is a thrust that's missing in the urban dimension of our country. So while there's a lot of momentum and there's a lot of activities happening in the rural space, the urban space doesn't see that kind of thrust, I think. So I think it all boils down to that definition which we are still sticking on to. And so if we can actually move towards a territorial development where we integrate the rural and the urban aspects of community engagement, I think that will do a lot good. So in terms of social aspects and of planning, as we all know, the URDPFI guidelines are there, wherein we actually prescribe, what are what are the kind of clinics and primary healthcare centers that you need in a community, per capita norms, etc. So, but I think it's all about enforcement and how you actually train the local bodies to use these plans and to enforce them and implement them and roll them out. So I think with that we can see, and also engage the community in actually preparing these plans. So I think that's the answer that we need to look at.
So that's a very important aspect of bringing the people in from diverse stratas, whether it is urban or rural, because the aspirations of quality of life remain the same for everyone, and that can only come with inclusivity of whether a person is within a rural hinterland or within an urban hinterland. So while we've had this varied discussion where we've spoken about innovations in technology, bringing the human aspect while keeping the tradition of urban planning in view, I think one of the key takeaways from this session has been that innovations in urban planning may see more fruition once the management policies, strategies at the ground level up is disseminated, so that the bottoms up approach can be formalized for the nation at large. And while we are sitting here looking at the next 25 years of development, when India at 2047 would be a major economy and a force to reckon with, I think urban planning in itself would be a major tool which would be a driving force for it. I would now like to open up the forum for any Q&As that the audience may have. Yes, Amit, please. Uh, Amit is a colleague of mine. Right behind you, Amit.
Hi. Well, thank you so much. I think it was a very honest and open conversation that I heard, and thank you so much for that. Just a couple of questions that I have. One is, we have this green buildings, the LEED, right, certifications. Has to be honest, has it really captured up in the market? Has there been a pull up in the market? Because we don't see as many LED certified buildings or homes being marketed per se. So that's one question. The other question I have is, if they have not, and considering the kind of climate change issues that we are facing with, uh, there are two questions under this. One is, Vineeta ma'am, is it possible that, through policies, through notifications, government resolutions, that these can be mandated? So today they are encouraged, they are incentivized, but can they be mandated? Is there a time today that, we don't have a choice but to mandate them, A? And B, to Dr. Rumi, are there urban planning tools available to ensure more sustainability from the climate change perspective in the urban planning? Three, the third thing that I want to ask is, you know, we some of the urban plans that I've looked at, unfortunately, do not seem to have the economic perspective to it, the economic overlay, and that's why you see a lot of lopsided development driven by the market forces. And I think having economic triggers or having economic impetuses drawn into the urban planning becomes very important, and that's what I think Dr. Ruby also said, is having economists as part as a discipline to come in also. So these are my questions, please.
So I'll first ask Vineeta to respond, and then Dr. Rumi, please.
Yeah, sure. So I was just going to mention about this point of actually integrating the certificates, the green certificates into the building bylaws. I think it's high time we do that, like we did for rainwater harvesting. I think most of the governments have rainwater harvesting as one of the mandatory construction practices. So similarly, I think we need to look at ecologically friendly building materials and promoting the use of such materials integrated into our building bylaws. It's something that can go maybe as a part of the findings of this entire proceedings of this workshop. And about the economic development, I don't know, maybe you can add on. Or I just wanted to talk about the local economic development as well, as it's so important to actually have the economic dimensions integrated into urban planning, because one of the biggest issues that most of our city governments face today is the revenue deficits and the lack of actually budgetary resources to actually implement things. So whereas the rural local bodies have gone ahead and they know how to do their budgeting for themselves. So.
Dr. Rumi, if you would like to respond.
Yeah, I would like to, but the voice was not very clear. There was a little more bass and less of treble, because of which
All right.
I could not follow your question properly.
Yeah, so my question was that, are there urban planning tools, okay, which can actually help enhance the climate change that we want to effect, which is reduce the impact of the climate change? Are there urban planning tools that are available? That's one point. And the second point was on the economic overlay that seems to be missing from the overall urban planning or in the urban plans, the developmental plans, etc. that we see.
Second part again, please.
The economic overlay that is required in urban planning. So the urban plans, the development plans, for some reason, I do not see an economic perspective being put into them. And that's why we see a lot of
Okay.
market-driven, lopsided development.
Okay, I will make an attempt to respond to both parts of your question. About the first one, and also about the second one, if you might have heard the previous panel presenting the master plan for Delhi and their description of the scope of the plan. There are chapters on both environment and there is a chapter on economy. And what do these chapters provide? They provide information that helps us understanding and helps implementing agencies in guiding that these are the measures that you have to take if you have to bring down the emissions or have a better environment, or how can the economic condition of a city be enhanced or strengthened. In the case of Delhi's master plan, if you ask me, very recently I wrote about it also because we are expected in our office to write frequently on a variety of urbanization related aspects. And I did attempt an appraisal or a critique of the environment chapter provided in the Delhi master plan. From whatever I remember, a number of measures have been proposed. That's how plans provide information. They propose a series of ideas, or you can say policy statements, which are broken down further into projects and programs for implementation. And insofar as environment is concerned, they talk about having a green buffer all around Delhi, protecting natural resources by creating buffers like planting vegetation, or shifting to better fuels and electric provision for of infrastructure for electric vehicles. So, and a variety of other things which I'm unable to remember at the moment. But according to me, a master plan or a plan for a city or a smart city plan, which some of our earlier speakers referred to, in my view, they address this aspect in the best possible manner. And even with regard to economic aspects, from the point of view of planning, planners propose or assign or allocate land for starting various types of economic activities. They propose if I've understood your question correctly, earmarking spaces for street vending or hawking facilities. So that's the role of the planner. You assign a space and you reserve it under a law, and then you try to conduct an activity which is of most importance to a person who lives in informal areas, to ensure that they also get a space to operate in the city. These are the things that come to my mind at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rumi. We have another
with your
question
permission,
here.
can I refer to the last question that he asked regarding the economics?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah,
Um,
please continue.
Yes, I think this is, first of all, not everything is measured, can be measured directly with saving or thing like this, and this is exactly the place that the government need to take place. Because in the long term, every pain of a city have economic benefits. If we're going to take, for example, sanitization of water, also electricity saving, even though electricity can be measured immediately. In the long term, if you will make the water sanitized, then you will have people that are more healthy and reduce the cost of the healthy society that you need to put on people. So this is exactly the place that the government sometimes needs to interfere inside. And for example, we have a project, even though, as I said, that we can measure the saving directly, that the government fund for cities full project. And once that the cities will make this project of smart connectivity and smart lighting, and it's fully funded. So this is exactly the place that combination between the government and the business industry together.
Thank you, Mr. Saadi. Please, sir, your question.
I'm Aijaz from Bangladesh, and I'm so grateful that I have attended here. And here is so big and experienced person about the smart city. So I came here and 15 March for the survey purpose, and I have a unique idea for the smart city, and I visited in Delhi and another city, more places for the survey. So I have an idea that here in Delhi on the Pune can be unique idea and the unique project who is you have done and doing and running the projects, and after then the idea, my unique idea can be a good one. So how can I propose you, and how can I share you with the government and any kind of companies of hair? This is my one question. Another question is, Joshore district established in 150 years ago, and the oldest municipality in the all over the India and Bangladesh. So we started some idea in Jashar. So in 2012, government has declared that Joshore is the digital district.
Okay.
So just now you are doing running having this project in here in Delhi, but we are starting. We wish to start.
Right.
So how can I help? How can I design and a good project proposal? So we need your help. Who are you doing more idea about the smart city?
So that's a very interesting point. I wish if we could connect after this session.
Yeah.
I would like to maybe introduce those aspects wherein you could share your innovative ideas at a government platform.
Yeah.
Also, if you wish to establish any connects with the smart city SPVs which are functioning out and rolling out the mission,
Yeah.
maybe I could share immediately after this session for the benefit of time for everyone with you one-on-one.
Okay. So, with us, I have a one government officer. So if you agree, then the government officer can be joined with us and with me.
Yeah, surely that would be wonderful.
Okay.
Is there any other question from this forum? Yes, please.
Yeah, I have a basic question regarding this, that the cultural mindset that we are seeing as far as this environment sustainability is concerned, that is something very terrifying, simply because, we see with the electric vehicles also, we see with the housing also, same thing is happening with even with the lighting and the electrical equipment also, that people overuse it, and basically use it basically beyond their self life, because of which, that I mean, once they are using it, beyond their self life, obviously, there are issues with the social ramifications as far as, waste is concerned, they can't be easily disposable because most of these things are not easily biodegradable, And once the government regulations come in, simply because, throwing all this junk at one go is not environmentally feasible, So how can that be made, much more, sustainable? That's my point. So, can you enlighten? And my question is to Guy.
Shriti, would you like to respond?
Sure. I'm not sure if I've garnered the question properly, but I think we need to build more. So instead of using the word sustainability, I think saying building technologies that are climate responsive is more open ended. It sort of takes in the the multiple variables, because what might be sustainable in one as part of India might not be sustainable for another part of the country or another part of the globe. So I think if we have climate responsive technologies, and I think he mentioned about biodegradability, so I think that circles back to using the approach of circular economy. So traditionally, most businesses and products that we use are linear, you use and you dispose of. So if yes, we build products, especially in considering urban planning segment here, that are circular, gate cradle to gate or cradle to cradle, then definitely we can explore more technologies that are biodegradable, more products that are biodegradable. But um, as the fellow speaker said before, there has to be more requirement of making these mandated than a suggestion. But yes, we should be more tangibly measuring the cradle to cradle footprint of all the technologies that are there to build more climate responsive design. I think that might address the solution.
Thank you, Shruti, for that response. Uh, I, I hope there aren't. Okay, sorry, we'll take the last question, after which we'll wrap up this forum.
Thank you. Shruti ma'am, actually we are in a stage of rapid advancement of technology. So in recent 10 years, the construction which we have done, and we are expecting in another 100 years, means in the stage of advancement, the construction which we have done yet. So what would be the criteria, how we can maintain the future projects in such case of construction management?
Sorry, can you repeat the last leg of your question?
Means in in our last decade, means last 20 years, the construction which we
Right.
have done. So in coming 100 years, the construction which we have done, how we can make up to mark?
How can we bring construction up to mark?
Yeah, means the building which we have constructed, these are all constructed. I mean, in near future, how we can make up to a level so that it can be sustained up to a long time.
So, are you talking about retrofitting?
Retrofitting also, in case of advancement approach technology, means in near future you will decide in the next 10 years that technology definitely will change. So these technology which we will implant in near future for the projects, but for the last, those constructed, how will match these are the things.
I definitely agree that there's a lot of scope to, address the existing buildings that are already there, because they are, as I earlier mentioned as well, once they are built, they already have a footprint that we should further first address before the new buildings that are going to be coming up in the future. And there's a lot of scope to retrofit existing buildings from the point of view of reducing their energy load, of retrofitting some of the materials that could be more sustainable, more permeable, more performance oriented for reducing the acoustics, making it more thermally insulated. I think if we could retrofit by consuming less new resources for the existing buildings, that can make a huge difference before just even just thinking about the fresh buildings that are coming up.
Sometimes what happens, the services which we laid in roads and in the infrastructure which we have already laid down. So these are the things. If we go deeper into the details and we go to advancement of the technology, we have to go again and again on the procedures. So these are the things. So these are my things which I have
No,
discussed.
definitely. If there's no need to reinvent the wheel, and we can make minor changes to the existing roads, the existing buildings that are there, and enhance their performance, that is definitely the best way to address urban constraints.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your question. So, on behalf of the organizers here and also the audience, I would like to thank all my esteemed colleagues, panelists for their knowledge sharing and their contribution to this session. And your guidance and your comments with this forum is important for us in terms of your encouragement and knowledge for this session. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for this very excellent session. Thanking all the speakers for raising certain concerns also, and then coming up with very constructive solutions and ideas and inputs towards shaping a more better and a sustainable urban planning. Thank you. I would like to invite Ms. Chandrika Behel, the Managing Director of Exhibitions India Group, to kindly present the special token of our gratitude and appreciation to all our speakers. Dr. Rumi Aijaz. Appreciation to Shruti Pandey. To Mr. Guy Saadi. Thanking Ms. Vinita Hariharan. And a big appreciation for our moderator, Ms. Nikita Krishan.